Hello and welcome to Islanders Anxiety from Lighthouse Hockey and the Fans First Sports Network. My name is Dan Saracini. Joining me on this Sunday afternoon via Zencaster is my friend Michael Leboff. And Mike, the Islanders have won, if you can believe it, 4 games in a row. I know we are in uncharted territory for this season, 4 whole games in a row. They are no longer in last place in the Metro, although they remain a mile or so outside of the final playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. This was, though, kind of a surprising week of wins. You know, they did avenge one loss from last week, won a back-to-back, which is kind of surprising, and they beat one of the hottest teams in the league earlier in the week, although, again, it hasn't changed their place in the standings. Where are you right now with the New York Islanders after their massive 4 wins in a row?
Yeah, I mean, it's been such an irritating, trying
Yes.
season that it's not been very fun to like be rooting for the Islanders. They've played with your emotions very loosey with the football type
Hmm.
season so far. That um, I was not mentally prepared for them to do this a few games in a row, and almost had to retrain myself to just enjoy it. And kind of it all like the happiness all kind of came to a head, and I was really hit with one of those emotional waves that are just so great when you're a
Hmm.
sports fan and things are going well. Which once again forgot how that felt season, 'cause it's been basically since like last April when the
Right.
Islanders went on that run to make the playoffs since we felt one. Um, was the Islanders in that insane game against the Hurricanes for a number of different reasons last night. Just so many different storylines coming into it. Um, for both teams, and there's uh the Islanders, they win in overtime. Ilya Sorokin gets the win with one
Mm.
save. I don't even think that should have counted as a shot on goal, but a 0 save win for Sorokin, because Marcus Hogberg got hurt, and the lights are dim at UBS Arena. I'm sitting on the couch, um, thinking about sticking around for the post-game show, which I've very rarely done this season.
Mm.
Um, and they're announcing the 3 stars, which is usually something I never pay attention to until, like, it's, an interview after a huge game, and maybe I'll listen to, like, whoever is the 1st star with Shannon, because you're just jacked up, and the 3rd star comes out. Man, I couldn't tell you who a 3rd star has been for the New York Islanders, maybe since Lubo Wisnowski did that lap of honor. I don't even know if he was the 3rd or 2nd star that night, against the playoffs, and he skated, around Nassau Coliseum the whole length of the ice. Um,
Mm.
but it was Marcus Hogberg who had
Yeah.
just left the game hurt. So Sorokin comes in cold in overtime, and you think it's one of those moments. Not only is Hogberg hurt, but now Sorokin's gonna get hurt because he had no
Mm.
time to warm up, and he's
Right.
coming in during overtime against a good team, and it was just such a funny, fun moment to watch
Right.
Marcus Hogberg hurt,
Mm.
hurt Marcus Hogberg come out to lap up, the 3rd star honors in at UBS Arena, good crowd, that it made you, like, kinda sit and wonder, get mad at yourself for being as irritated as you've been the
Mm.
entire season. Because it's moments like that, it wasn't even something that happened during the game. Gutsy win,
Mm.
like you said, that caps off 4 in a row for them. Yeah, they're not fully back in the playoff race, but they're certainly they've got more to say about it now. So it was this really nice win against a team we hate, against a team that's now the cream of the crop, everyone's
Right.
favorite pet team.
Right.
Islanders spoil the party, and there is their number 3 goalie who hadn't been heard from in the NHL for years,
Mm.
playing out of his skull, gets hurt, leaves the game, and then the next time you see him is to take that lap, and it was just one of those moments where you almost, like I said, you almost get mad at yourself for taking this stuff as seriously as you do and
Mm.
getting as mad as you did because the Islanders lost to the Blackhawks after, and with a minute left in regulation and stuff, because
Right.
these are the fun times, the fun moments, and
Right.
it was they're so light and great, and with the couple days that the Islanders had, and uh, the season that they've had, it was really a nice reminder of like why and how sports can be something great.
Yeah, definitely. That was one of a couple of sort of unintentional, hilarious moments for Marcus Hogberg. We'll get to the other one in a little bit, but yeah, him coming out and accepting that 3rd star, and he tried to throw a puck over the glass and he missed, and then he had to do it again. It's like, oh man, it was at one point like you're like, oh come on, like you've done all this and now this is happening. It was a very Islanders moment. There was another injury in that game we'll talk about when we get there. But yeah, him coming out and doing that and accepting that award was really funny. And I don't know if there's another team out there that has as many funny star of the game moments as the Islanders do. You just mentioned the Wisnowski thing. We've talked a lot about the playoff clinching in 2002 with
Right.
Claude Lapointe and Kenny Johnson and Steve Webb. And we've had a few of those around. So, but we'll talk about that game in due time. We'll talk about the other two games as well. Reminder that we are on Patreon at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety. Membership gets you ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts like our mailbag and our country club atmosphere, plus written posts and a whole lot more. So sign up today at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety, or just join for free. You can get our weekly release calendar and any announcements. So let's go back in time. That's the most recent game. It'll be set up after we talk about the other games earlier this week. Like I said, one of them involved what was at the time basically the hottest team in the NHL. It was the Columbus Blue Jackets. They were 6-0-1 coming into UBS Arena on Monday night, and the Islanders really, I mean, we talked about this last week. They had won Saturday night, kind of rescuing themselves after a pretty shitty last week. And we had no belief that they were going to win this game. And when Kent Johnson, who kills the Islanders, I don't know what this guy has against the Islanders, scored an easy power play goal in the first period. You're like, oh, here we go. This is exactly the way we thought it was going to work out. But I don't know if there was like a tongue lashing in the locker room. I think Butch and Brendan may have alluded to it, or somebody decided we're not going to play this type of game today. They came out and they had a great second, arguably their best second period of the season, or one of them anyway. It was a couple of goals from Bo Horvat, including a power play goal, if you can imagine that. Go figure. So really, Barzal found him in the spot, one timer both times. In the middle was a Simon Holmstrom from JG Pajot's shorthanded goal, classic style, which was what made it 2-1. And then again, like I said, Horvat again, 3-1. No goals in the third, but Ilya Sorokin was fantastic. He stood out. The Blue Jackets had 10 shots in that period. Sorokin ended up with 25 saves for the entire game. Elvis Merzlikins had 22 for the game. And again, this was a game that, I mean, listen, you can call me a Debbie Downer or whatnot, but if you've followed along this entire season, like Mike said, this has been a frustrating, infuriating season. And there was no chance that they were going to win this game based on what we had seen earlier this year. I mean, they'd only won 2 games back to back. They had won 3 games twice all season long. And so the thought of them backing up one win with the second one against a team as hot as Columbus was. Columbus, by the way, went at a night or two later, went into Toronto and shut the Leafs out. So it wasn't like they just, decided to be bad again. The Islanders just beat them, and they're still pretty good. Still want to hang on to that last playoff spot. This was a pretty big one, and it felt like a good game. It felt like a very classic Islanders game. We're going to talk about that a little bit next as well. But what'd you make of the win over Columbus, particularly that second period in which Bo Horvat and Matt Barzal just decided, no, we're not losing this game?
Yeah, this was the game that was. It felt like the fork in the road for me. In terms of like how engaged I was, or re-engaged I was going to get with this season,
right?
Because I had it on in the background for the first period. I saw the early goal, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to start doing shit around the house, and I'll just have the game on TV over there. I won't even be really paying attention much, and because I, like you, just thought, game over.
Yeah.
After a great, you guys won a couple games in a row, talked a big, you did the opposite of what Teddy Roosevelt did. You were carrying a small stick and speaking loudly, and then you come out after a good performance on Saturday night, and 2 days. It only took 2 days for the air to get taken right back out of the tires.
Right.
Seen this act before, etc. I'm done. And then, like you said, they just really took the game to Columbus, and the season was basically on the line for those 2 periods. Those 2 periods were essentially a must win for the Islanders, and that added to my there's no way they're gonna take care of business here feeling, and they did, and they played really well. I thought basically to a man, the Islanders were quite good. Sorokin thought the blue line was really good. I think Adam Pelech is starting to really find his game.
Mm.
And I after that win, it was the classic. Okay, we did our part. Now we have a couple of days off before Friday, which is always nice. So you don't even have to sweat through another game. The scoreboard hasn't been too kind to the Islanders of late, but it felt nice to just like get that win and then almost cut ties with the team for a few days before they were back in action on Friday. But they a win that they deserved a lot of credit for, and it felt like the Islanders were another step forward. Like over the years, we've talked so much about how you can see things coming with this team, whether good or bad. And that performance, I was like, "Ooh, man, that's the type of win that if they're able to continue along this trajectory, they can still have something to say about this season. Obviously, long way before that's a thing. But that only matters if they continue to win games and the way the schedule is shook out. They obviously had a huge game again on Friday night against another team they were competing with. But before they got to there, obviously, man, what a strange season it's been for the Islanders in terms of just like injuries.
Yes.
Because like obviously Noah Dobson goes down, but before we even talk about that, every season it seems like there's always a team where there's just like a catastrophic amount of injuries to them, and it happens every year and whatever. It's just that's sports. The Devils dealt with a ton of injuries last year. The Islanders a couple years ago had a pretty cursed injury season.
Yeah. It felt like it happened to the Capitals a lot,
Yeah,
years ago.
right.
It was always like, man, what is going on down there? They're always hurt all the time.
Even the Leafs, I think, was it 2 years ago or last year? Like everyone on their blue line was hurt, and the Canadian Parliament met to like figure out how to handle this, and they gave out medals for the guys continuing to play despite a few injuries.
Right.
But usually you know about it because you hear about it and it's covered. But as we know over the years, the Islanders just don't get that kind of attention for a variety of different reasons. So it almost makes you forget because it's not a storyline just how bad the injury bug has hit this team. The Islanders have had so many defensemen play for this team this season. It's Dennis Cholowski has played he's played, let's see here, 29 games. Isaiah George has played 31 games. Like this team has just been absolutely shell-shocked on the blue line. Adam Pelech's missed 20-something games. Alexander Romanov's I think he's missed around 15 games. I mean, even George was hurt for a few games.
We got another one coming up that we're going to talk about soon.
Yeah, so Dobson gets hurt. And not only does Dobson get hurt, but it completely gets unreported. The Islanders' number one defenseman goes out and is probably out long term. But the nature of how it happened was almost too on the nose because like the day before, the entire hockey world shut down to weigh in on Connor McDavid cross-checking Connor Garland in the face, right? Like there was a statement released. Everybody had to weigh in on it. It's the most exhausting conversation you can imagine.
They took a break from the JT Miller, Elias Pettersson drama to have some Edmonton Connor McDavid suspension drama.
A moment of silence for the three games that we won't have to get to watch Connor McDavid play. They dimmed the lights and then they talked with some brooding music in the background and discussed whether or not he deserved it and if the game protects its superstars or not. Hey, you know who didn't get protected? Noah Dobson. He got cross-checked in the face the same way that McDavid cross-checked someone in the face and he got hurt and there was nothing about it. I don't even care about the suspension, but Noah was like, oh man, Noah Dobson, that was a cheap shot from Cole Sillinger, who was the first of two former Islanders' sons to injure an Islander defenseman this season. So you want to talk about a cursed, insane season. Yeah, this week the Islanders lost their only two defensemen who had played the entire season. Brendan even said it on the broadcast right after Dobson got hurt. He's like, well, the only other one was Ryan Pulock, who's played every game this season. And as soon as he said that, I was like, oh man, you know what that means? Yeah. Just wait. And yeah, it was another former Islanders player's son who hurts him. So in 1 week, the Islanders season just got completely repainted because of an injury. And then they had a little powwow with the season ticket holders in between. And it was, I mean, this season has, if you're a fan and you're still standing after this season, you've done it. Like you've earned your card. We've both been through some really trying seasons in
Yep.
the past, but they've been like more like it's linear than this. Like you can tell the path. Like, yeah, this team sucks. Like Mike Iggledon's playing for this team. I know they're not going to win many games, and some weird shit will happen because they're bad. This team is in a completely different environment than that, and it's weird because it's happening. Each season is happening, compounding into one another. Each sequential season since the pandemic, basically. If you're still standing after this one, man, you deserve a ton of credit as just like a fan. And I don't know what kind of human beings will be after all of this is said and done, because it's like every day you wake up and you like shock yourself awake as an
Right.
Islander fan. You're like, oh my god, are we gonna find out like Kyle McLean is actually in witness protection or something and he's playing for the Islanders? Like that's how weird we're getting now.
Yeah, right. If this was a video game, this would be expert mode. Like there's no like, nothing easy here. There's no like, one hit kills for these guys. Like this is expert mode right now. And so yeah, if you are hanging around towards, by the end of the season, God, if you're hanging around still listening to this podcast in the end of January, you deserve all the credit in the world, because most people probably would have dipped out by now. But yeah, the Dobson injury is huge, and there's the unfortunate dark lining around what again was a really enjoyable win. I don't know if you've seen the video. I'm not a doctor. Andrew Gross on his podcast said I'm not a doctor as well. He doesn't play one on podcasts, and neither do I. But from what I could see, Dobson's ankle went in directions that human ankles aren't meant to go, and that is bad. He's out week to week with a lower body injury, and of course, as we all know, week to week in Islanders speak means we won't see him again until next Christmas. And by see him again, I mean hear from him, see Instagram picture. This guy will be ethered out of existence until he is ready to come back, and it could be a while. And we've given Dobson, every Islanders fan has given Dobson a lot of grief for how he's played over the last little while. It's been kind of an unfortunate drop from what he was the first half of last season. But obviously nobody wants to see him get hurt, and it's an unfortunate situation. Again, the fact that Mike Sillinger's son was involved makes it even more bizarre. But these are the Islanders, so it's kind of par for the course. So that was not good, and he's going to be out for a while. And so the Islanders felt the need to fix the situation. And so what they did was they reached out and signed a player from the KHL. Anyway, on Friday, the Islanders played the Flyers and won 3-1, avenging their previous loss last week. This one, again, much like the Columbus game, looked like it was going to go awry when Alex Romanov hit Cam York, totally clean in the shoulder. Flyers didn't like it. The Islanders pushed back a little bit, and you're like, oh, Christ, here we go again. Tyson Forster scores on a quick 2-on-1 right after that, and you're just like, oh, geez, here we go. You can't lose twice to the Flyers and then try and sell us the idea that you're going to make a playoff push here. But all of a sudden the Islanders score twice in 45 seconds. Brock Nelson gloves down a pass. He sends it to Anthony Duclair, who ties the game. Really, really great to see Duclair score. It's only his fourth goal of the season. Obviously he was hurt for a long time, but he looked very relieved, and it was a beautiful goal as well. And then Barzal to Horvat again on a 2-on-1, makes it 2-1 Islanders. They had a weak start to the first period, but finished okay. A lot of big hits. There was a lot of hits in this game, which was kind of interesting. Again, maybe these two teams don't like each other, and we'll find out next week in Philly how much they despise each other. Nelson scores again, really quick up the boards pass, and then he wrists it past Ivan Fedotov, makes it 3-1. Sorokin again, huge, made a huge big toe save late on somebody. I forget who. No goals in the third, but Sorokin was again standing on his head very well. Again, made 28 saves. Fedotov 24. The Islanders went 1-for-1 on the PK and 0-for-3 on the power play. And as interesting as good as it was that they beat the Flyers, because you don't want to lose twice to a team that's like literally right in front of you in the standings, and frankly isn't that good. No offense to my Flyers friends. I mean, the Islanders aren't that good either, but they're not certainly not any worse than the Flyers, really. I found this game painfully boring. I was just bored to death. And in the post game, somebody asked Patrick Waugh, like, is that how you want the team to respond? Is this like your perfect game plan sort of executed to the T. And he responded, yeah, basically that's how we want to play. And I thought, okay, that makes sense. But man, this was really boring. It was really kind of hard to watch, even with the hits. And it's just like, I don't know. There was almost no juice outside of that first few minutes. Maybe that was the thing. Maybe I kind of expected a little bit more animosity and hatred, but it never materialized. And when Was said that that was kind of how they envisioned the game unfolding and their game plan being executed, I thought to myself, well, maybe if you guys had 30 wins instead of 20 and hadn't spent the first 3 months of the season farting into each other's faces, like I said on Blue Sky, maybe I would like it a lot more. Maybe this would have been okay. It's a nice boring win in the end of January. Okay, great. Sign me up. But again, it just goes back to just how this season has unfolded. And it's, again, their third straight win. And against a team that's right in front of them. This should have been a really joyous occasion. And it was just instead just sort of like, all right, I guess that's it. So I don't know. Am I wrong? Did you derive any more enjoyment out of this 3-1 win over the Flyers than I did? Because again, outside of the Duclair goal, I found the whole thing very, very forgettable.
This added to the bizarreness of the season. I think this win, and it had nothing to do with how they played or what happened during the game or anything. But what was going on was the Hurricanes and Avalanche and Blackhawks were making that trade while the Islanders were playing, and it was a stark reminder that it just like the Islanders are just not in the NHL, right?
No.
Like they're just not. They're playing these games in a completely different league and universe than the rest of the league is, because all this is happening. Like news is breaking. Duclair scores and trickling. We got more new information from this trade trickling in, and someone else scores, and
right.
And it was like a really weird, and I think that kind of adds to why you felt that way. Is like
probably
you were like half paying attention to the game, being like, does this game even fucking matter? Like the league is doing like all lathering itself up and whatever while this is happening. And they just made the move for on waivers too. Like this is it almost felt like the game was like not it didn't even wasn't even happening. It was so strange. But they played like the way I think they had to. And what was encouraging was that this Flyers team was very physical with them ragdolling the Islanders around quite a bit a week before in one of the most infuriating losses of a season that has full of them, and embarrassing loss. And the Islanders actually answered the bell in this one. Alex Romanov had that big hit. They seemed to stand up for one another more. They were in the fight, and I wonder if like the team has addressed what happened with against the Flyers from the previous meeting and been like, this is pathetic, and we got to be more physical, because I think the team has been more physical and it's been helpful. Like when you're a team that is lacking the talent that the Islanders are, and you're banged up to boot, you have to raise other elements of your game to level the playing field, and being physical is one way you can do it in hockey, and the Islanders are doing that lately. And it's the first time they've been doing it, I think, since at the end of last year. Like they've just not been a physical team this season at all. And Simon Holmstrom also, like we talked about the injuries, him being out was quietly a pretty big loss too. And so there's all this stuff happening. The Islanders kind of just end up winning the game. But it was so far down the result was so far down the list of like newsworthy items that day that it felt weird. Like I went to bed and woke up the next morning. It's like, why am I in a good mood again? Oh, the Islanders played last night. They won. I forgot about that. So that set the stage for Saturday night, which was the game that if the Islanders were going to really pull us all back into the fight, they win that game on Saturday night against the odds, especially with what was going on with Carolina. And I don't know, do we want to talk about that now, or do we want to wait?
We're going to talk about that in the second half, because I want to get into kind of how it went down, and again, the reporting on it and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah. It was nauseating. So like I really wanted the Islanders to win that game, and normally when that happens, I feel that they never deliver. But they did.
Yeah. And again, I hate that I feel this way. And I don't know if I've been as cynical during a season as I have been this season. Maybe it was the one in 2012 when I began tweeting as culture of losing because I was so mad at how the Islanders season was going. I haven't felt this cynical about a team in a long time. And so after they won that game, I thought, well, there's no way they win Saturday, right? Like the Hurricanes are coming in. I mentioned on Blue Sky, congratulations to Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall on their hat tricks against the Islanders on Saturday night, because I just couldn't imagine a scenario in which the Islanders played well enough a night later against a team that had now coming in, much like the Columbus game was coming in with a ton of juice, with a ton of excitement, with two brand new players, one of whom is, an all-star. Taylor Hall is not that anymore, but he still can contribute, and we've seen that before. But wouldn't you know it, they made me into a fool because they won 3-2 in overtime. We talked. I really should go back and kind of quantify that episode we did with the different tiers, like the feel good wins, the feel bad losses, the feel bad wins, that whole thing. Because this was a good win. It started out very poorly. Ryan Pulock got hurt. I'll get back to that in a second. But the Carolina Hurricanes scored 2 goals in a minute and 30 seconds. And both of them involved Isaiah George. He had a front row seat for Jack Roslovic's long wrister that got past Marcus Hogberg right off the bat. And then 90 seconds later, Sebastian Aho throws the puck towards the front, goes right off of George's skate and past Hogberg. And you're like, okay, this is not going to go well. We're just going to ride this out. But they got better during the course of the period. Alex Romanov scores his first goal of the season. I think I've figured out why they've been struggling a little bit this year. They get a lucky bounce of their own off Roslovic past Peter Kochekov as their power play expires. Not a power play goal, but pretty close to it. Kokoniemi and JG Pajot fight. Kokoniemi gets behind. I've never seen this before. Kokoniemi kind of gets behind JG Pajot. Looks like he was going to get him in a sleeper hold or a full Nelson maybe, and then Pajot turned around. It wasn't really much of a fight. JG just kind of ended up on his back after a couple of seconds. But the Islanders, like you said, they showed some fight. They got back in it. They decided that they weren't just going to kind of roll over here. So it remained 2-1 through 2 periods. Kochekov was playing pretty well. He had 2 huge poke checks, one on Bo Horvat, who was on a breakaway. He had him beat, ready right in his sights, and Kochekov came out and poke checked the puck away. Really nice play, actually. Tense third period, very physical, kind of going back at it. They broadcast mentioned that the Islanders were hanging with the Hurricanes punch for punch. It was actually quite heartening to see. Eventually, Romanov finds Horvat. Horvat takes a shot, short rebound, right to Andersley, backhands it in over Kochekov, tie game. They're hanging on, and this is where injury number 2 happens. We'll talk about most of them in a second. Hogberg looks to hurt his finger. And this is, bad. He played the rest of the game. In fact, he made a save with his head at one point, and we get the other piece of unintentional comedy from Marcus Hogberg this season when Butch Goring said about that puck that it hit the hog in the head, which we found roariously funny and was immediately used in our group chat. So it hit the hog in the head. But they go to overtime, and Hogberg heads to the locker room because he's hurt. So here comes Ilya Sorokin. He's been sitting down there the whole time. Thomas Hickey's like, it's cold down here, guys. He hasn't skated. He hasn't done anything. Gets a couple of seconds to kind of flash his legs out there. Overtime starts. Sorokin makes one save on barely a shot. But Brock Nelson finds himself on a 2-on-1 with Kyle Palmieri, or rather Palmieri finds Nelson, and Nelson just risks it over Kochekov's shoulder. Great win, great come from behind win. This team has not had in quite a long time. Hogberg finishes with 24 saves. Again, he was terrific after that bad, 90 seconds or whatever it is. Sorokin's just a 1, but he gets the win. Kochekov was pretty good also with 23. He's always pretty good against the Islanders. Unfortunately, it might be too late for this team to really kind of make hay of these sorts of wins. But the big stories are Ryan Pulock getting hurt on the first shift of the game. I don't know, man. I don't want to start shit, but was that not a slew foot? Jackson Blake kind of gets behind him. Am I crazy? I was looking at him. I'm like, Butch said, yeah, there should have been a penalty, but he always says stuff like that. But how is that not a slew foot? He puts his knee behind Pulock's knee, and then Pulock falls, and it looked like he hurt his shoulder. They mentioned that kind of an upper body thing. So I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy. It looked pretty bad and very unnecessary, but it happened. And then at the end of the game, Hogberg hurt his finger. So Hogberg surprisingly has been great. Varlamov is in the Islanders injury protection program. We have no idea when he's going to come back or if he's ever going to come back. And Pulock being out for any length of time is a disaster for the Islanders. And it's really, I feel like the hockey gods are trying to tell Lou Lamoriello, you got to pull the plug on this season. We're going to keep taking players from you until you finally figure it out. I'm not trying to make light of it, but really, I mean, after losing Dobson, Ryan Pulock is just about the last person that they need to lose. Romanov was terrific in this game. Led all the skaters in. He was the first star. He played more minutes than anybody. But I don't know. There's so much to unpack in this game. Where are you at from the game itself to the injuries? Like, what kind of stands out for you, basically?
Yeah, there's a lot, right?
Yeah.
This game felt like it. First of all, I was at my my friend's dad's, a very good friend of mine, his father's 70th birthday party for the first period. So I didn't even really watch much of it at all. I checked in on the score, so it was 0-0. I was like watching at the front of the bar, and then I went back. I was like, oh, this looks like a classic. Gonna end 0-0, and I won't miss much. And then I 3 minutes later it came out, and it was 2-0, and I hadn't seen how the goals were scored, and by the time I sat down, I was caught up and everything. It was 2-1. The Islanders were playing well, and I finally saw how this Hurricanes scored the second goal, and I was like, oh, this is exactly how it goes every fucking time we play the Hurricanes. The Islanders are going punch for punch at them, but one goal goes off of somebody's ankle from the corner of the ice, and then goes off the goalie's ankle and in, and they get the break and the win. So perfect.
I hope Isaiah George has a very long and successful NHL career, and I hope that those two shifts are the worst shifts of his entire career, and then he can never have to worry about them ever again.
I really wonder if when I've obviously Isaiah George is young and will say oh, when he got drafted, oh great, happy to go to an organization like the Islanders, etc. But I wonder if these guys can feel that the curse coming over them when they start to become Islanders. He's now an Islander. He's played what would we say 30 games already,
right?
Yeah. And he's like, wow, why are these weird things happening to me? It happened. And Bo Horvat looks at him. He's like, oh man, you haven't even been sued yet for land use. Just wait till the lawsuit gets thrown at you. Then right. So, but yeah, I just thought it's gonna be a classic game, but the more and more that the game went on, the more I was getting dragged into the fight, and man, I hate those Hurricanes teams. I hate these teams.
They're the worst.
Oh, it's so brutal to watch, and we'll talk. Like I said, I'm doing my best to avoid going into the trade talk, etc. But it was especially pungent that day with the trade stuff and whatever. And but the Islanders played really, really well for the big moments of that game. Hogberg was great. Butchie was great. The whole roster was good. There was 5 defensemen for the whole night. After this, like you said, it was a slew foot. This is what I don't understand. And this is a game that most people are probably watching because of the trade, and I didn't see anybody be like, "Ooh, that was a slew foot."
Right? Am I crazy?
No, it looked like it, and I don't. That doesn't mean it was intentional or anything, but that's what a slew foot is. Sometimes it could be accidental,
right?
But it certainly looked like it,
right?
And let's just put it this way: Jackson Blake did nothing to avoid taking Ryan Pulock's legs out from under him.
Right.
Whether he did some stuff to do it on purpose, who knows? And yeah, 15 seconds in, I remember getting caught up. I was texting a couple people hey, what's going on with the game? I'm just checking in now, and they're like, oh, all you need to know is Ryan Pulock's going to be out until next New Year's Eve. And I was like, oh, great, perfect. And just to get to the point that we're at now, they've had a heart condition. Adam Pelech got hit in the face. In the same game, the Islanders had a player get a concussion, which could have ended up saving his life. And Adam Pelech got hit in the face with a puck. They're both out for weeks, and one of them is still out. Pelech is obviously back and playing well. They've had Romanov in and out of the lineup all season. Mayfield had he missed a few games at one point. They've had Chalowski, Hutton, Bolduc play.
Yeah.
Travis Mitchell was traveling with the team for a little bit. Do you remember that?
Right.
They're like, we might need this guy who no one's ever heard of play for a little bit. Dobson now out. Pulock's now out. It's for the Islanders to get to, there's a reason why the Islanders made a desperation move, right? Like it's because they're desperate, and I like what you've been saying about the hockey gods and Lou, because it if there's one guy in hockey who will just not pick up the red phone that they each have in their office, that's a direct line from the hockey gods. And by the way, the hockey gods are Pierre LeBrun and Chris Johnston. They're saying, Lou, you have to. We've been saying all season that you're at the end of your rope. Pack it up. But no, he's going to ignore it until the bitter end. And I thought it was really funny that Brock Nelson ends up scoring that goal in overtime, sitting down with Shannon. It was like, yeah, we got something going here. And this whole week, part of the trade coverage from yesterday and this whole week has been a lot more people discovering Brock Nelson. Right. Being like, oh, who'd be a great fit for team here? Insert team name here. The Islanders have this guy Brock Nelson, who's a 2C. He might be great. Like, but after the game, he was like, "Nah, we got something going here. It's been great." And he's been emotional. He's been engaged. That month and a half that he was checked out was tough to watch because of the discourse around him. But he's back to being, the Brock that we love. But this was a type of game that I don't think it. I think it kind of dragged everybody back in. And look, this team is likely to make us look like fools in a couple of days. This is their MO to completely pull the rug out from all of us. But at least for right now, like, you can enjoy a game that had the funny moment with Butch and hitting the hog in the head. The goal from Lee, I thought, was a very Anders Lee, like, iconic goal. The Romanov was just throwing his body everywhere. Marcus Gatcomb is flying around, putting people through the boards. And then, of course, like the Hogberg, Sorokin, then Hogberg coming out as the third. I would have been great if the two of them came out together, holding hands for the third star. Romanov.
Romanov like ran right over to Sorokin.
Right to Sorokin. Yeah, like it was like a lot. And I feel like there's been so many times this season, this 2022, 2023, 23, 24, 24, 25 season, where there have been kind of fun, bubbly moments in a game. And then the Islanders just lose like 10 seconds later. And the one that always comes to my head is the Anders Lee fight against the Devils with like the blood pouring out of his mouth.
Yeah.
But this is one that they actually won. So like whenever I hear, think about Butch Goring saying hit the hog in the head, I won't have to be like, oh man, but they lost that game to the Wild. I get to think, oh man, and that was a good win. And it felt good afterwards to win that game. And the D, like every guy on that D, that blue line played really well. They all played a lot. Romanov played a ton of minutes. It was just a win, a win to be proud of, and 4 in a row, and now they get to at least pretend that they're still in it for a few more days,
right?
Which is fine, because it's not outlandish, but it's also it's not likely, but it's also not outlandish, which I'll sign up for that right now.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect segue, because that gives us time to look at these standings here. So right now, as of 2:00 on Sunday when we're recording this, the Rangers are playing the Avalanche and the Senators play later today. So these things could change, but as of right now, the Islanders have 49 points and are, they are second to last in the Metro. I just have the NHL standings up here. They're third to last in the conference, and they are 6 points out of 7th or 8th in the wild card. The Lightning and Blue Jackets are both in those two wild card spots with 55 points apiece. And so, the Islanders are within striking distance. Now, I think it's still an extreme long shot, and I'm going to read a tweet out in a second, but a couple of things the Islanders have going for them in their favor. One, and you might appreciate this, because I can't remember the last time this was the case, but they've only played 48 games to this point so far in the season. I can't remember the last time the Islanders weren't leading the NHL in games played. Like, they have games in hand on just about everybody ahead of them. The Rangers are tied at 48 with them now, but they'll be at 49 in a couple of hours. So like, this is the first time I can remember the Islanders having games on hand on a lot of these teams. So that's number one, helpful. Number two is they are actually technically over 500. They're 21-20-7. Which in NHL math equals a 510 winning percentage. So they actually have a better winning percentage than the Flyers, who are 1 point ahead of them. And of all of these teams that are behind the Lightning and Blue Jackets right now, because again, that could change today. It might be the Senators if they after today, or the Rangers could move up there as well. The Islanders actually have one of the better goal differentials. They're only at a -11. And I say only because the Penguins, who are a point behind them, are at a -39. The Flyers, who are a point ahead of them, are at a -21. The Red Wings, who are 2 points ahead of the Islanders, are at a -16. And the darling Canadians, who are only 2 points out of one of those spots and have 53 points, 4 points ahead of the Islanders, are at a -15. So they're all these teams are in arguably worse shape than the Islanders are. The Senators have a -1. The Rangers are a +2. And the Sabres are just, but it's pretty interesting. And like when you kind of look at it that way, the Islanders also, by the way, right now with their 4th win in a row, are quote unquote the hottest team in the NHL. They've won more games in a row than anybody else. By the way, they're also 500 at home. Finally, they're 11-11-2. Go figure. So like all of this stuff is fairly positive, but then when you really look at it, and again, you throw the Penguins in there because they're right behind the Islanders. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 teams basically scrambling for 2 spots. And that's when reality sort of comes crashing in again, in light of especially including Ryan Pulock being hurt, Noah Dobson being hurt, potentially Marcus Hogberg, who's come in and solidified backup position, being hurt. As much fun as these games were, notice who did a lot of the scoring. Bo Horvat, Brock Nelson, Anders Lee, Matt Barzal figuring in on all these goals, Anthony Duclair finally getting. These are your top 6 guys. Where is the bottom 6? I mean, yes, Simon Holmstrom had a goal and Pajot's been okay, but like in that bottom third, man, they're just that last final 4th line is just not doing anything offensively at all. All of a sudden, things start to get a lot more dark and a lot more like, I don't know about that. And so I am tempering my expectations. I enjoyed the game in a vacuum on Saturday. I actually, and I said this to our friend Ian on Blue Sky, that was the first time this season when Nelson scored that. This is so stupid, but like I'm watching the game by myself. I was watching my laptop, as I tell you guys. And like, when they score, I put my arms up like, hey, look at that. Last night, the first time all season that I have put my arms up, not kidding, legitimately, was when Brock Nelson scored that overtime goal. And I found myself legit excited, like, hey, look at that. And, and then again, you wake up and you look at the standings and you're like, I don't know. So this has just been the season. It's been, oh, that was cool, but and then it's followed by a big old blah. So I don't know, man. I don't know what to tell people. There are people who are checked out. I don't blame them. There are people who are excited. I don't blame them. There are people that are like, I don't care. Trade all these other guys. And I don't blame them. Like, I almost thought after Nelson scored, trade him right now. He's at peak value right now. Him and Paul Mary for that matter. Again, I don't blame you at all. So it just, this is not going to be, I think when it's all said and done, this season is going to go down as a very unenjoyable one, even if they make the playoffs, much like last year. So I don't know. What do you make of the standings right now? Again, you're talking about 10 teams. Yeah. Sorry, Sabres. 10 teams vying for 2 spots. And that's assuming that the Bruins, who are currently 3rd in the Atlantic, don't kind of fall back to the pack, which would make it 11 teams vying for 2 spots. It makes the situation even worse.
Yeah. I remember during the Murphy's Law season, and the Islanders like started to get their act together a little bit because they found their players. They knew where they like everyone was accounted for the first time all season.
Right.
And they started to win some games, and they had so many games in hand on everybody, and you could kind of see a path to like, oh, if they win all their games in hand, they're really only 2 points behind, whatever. And the way I was approaching it was like, just pretend the Islanders are like the standings aren't even there, like, and it's just the Islanders are in a like the goal is if they get to 90 points, it's then they're in, and if they don't, they're not. And that's how I'm looking at it again. I'm almost kind of putting the standings aside right now and not trying to make any sense of it because for a couple reasons. A, it's impossible to be like who to know who's going to be there when the stretch run comes, right? Like there's still the Islanders still have 34 games left this season. So that's so many games. And most teams are kind of like they do have games in hand on everyone. now, but most teams are in that like 30 to 32 range of games left. And it doesn't sound like a lot because you're in the back stretch of the season, you're in the second half of the season, but just to remind you how much can happen in 32 games,
Mm.
and how much can change. The Islanders played their 32nd game against. Oh wow, this is an aforementioned game on the podcast. They played the Chicago Blackhawks on the second of a home and home with the Chicago Blackhawks. So that was game 32 of the season. So just think about all the stuff that happened between the game against the Utah Hockey Club and the Chicago Blackhawks. And that's 32 games worth of stuff that can happen. The Islanders were getting shut out by like the Red Wings every other game. They were blowing leads against the
Right.
Devils all the time. They played a couple good games against the Blues at one point. They played a really good game against the Avalanche and the Canucks. So much stuff can happen. I mean, Dennis Cholowski was playing all these games. People were getting hurt. Matt Barzal was hurt for like 20 of these 32 games. Anthony Duclair played 5 games and then was not heard from for a while. Noah Dobson had his phone for most of them on the ice. It was just like the Islanders' power play and penalty kill were historically bad. All this stuff happens in a 32 game sample. So much can happen. And that doesn't mean just for the Islanders, like it's for every team. Think about where I'm sure when the Islanders were playing their 32nd game of the season, if we looked at the NHL standings, I'm sure that the Canadiens and the Blue Jackets were nowhere to be found and were basically written off by that point. And they're now both in really good positions in this fight comparatively to the Islanders. And think about the 32 games, like what happened with the Rangers for their first 32 games of the season.
Oh my God.
The Jacob Trouba saga, Kakko, Drury, the memo, the letter, Larry Brooks. We got to remind me that when we talk about all the transactions, I got a Larry Brooks tweet I got to read.
Oh yeah.
But so like so much can happen. So I'm trying not to like game out where the Islanders are probability wise or whatever in the standings right now. I'm just trying to think. I'm looking at it as they're not dead. They're still alive. They earned their way back into it, and they did what I asked them to do as a fan, which was, hey, win a bunch of games in a row, win a game, win at 8 out of 10, and then we can start. I'll be excited again. Because another thing we didn't talk about was during the Blue Jackets game, the camera pans to Matt Barzal.
Oh, that's right.
And Matt Barzal is saying to someone on the bench, allegedly, once again, we are reading here, and nobody's come out one way or another to say whether it was true or not. So I guess it probably was right that the place was empty, which it was. And it looked like he said it's a fucking joke. And then there was the first of many discourses.
I forgot that it was that game because it felt like it happened.
We just were talking about how much can happen in 32 games, how much can happen in 3 games, right? Like that felt. So he gets whatever, and it was empty. He's got every right to be mad about it, but at the same time, you're like, well, there's a lot of reasons why it's empty. It was a day after a snowstorm. It was freezing. Right. I think it was a holiday. It was right. It was, and there was the national championship game was going on.
Right.
Like there was so many reasons why that building should, and it would. If that building was full, I would have been mad. Right. That's like I would. But and the best part about it was like 24 hours later, the Leafs played the Blue Jackets, and Ryan Reeves got into a fight, and Austin Matthews criticized their fans for like not being loud. I was like, oh, this is so great. That is going to take up a lot of airtime and thankfully take away a lot from what was going on with Barzal. So appreciate that one, Austin Matthews. But yeah, I mean, so much can happen. I'm back in. Like if I probably won't be able to go to the game on Tuesday night against the Avalanche because of where I'm at with my family life. But if it was a little calmer, and I didn't have like a 2-month-old baby, I probably would be. I would be at this game because this is the type of game that the Islanders they've won me back, and they for at least a little while. They're still on very thin ice. They're very, very thin ice. And I don't expect them to beat the Avalanche again, but I'm willing to just to buy in for a little bit longer because this is, it's January 26th.
Mm.
October 10th is 9 months away. I would like a few more meaningful hockey games, as
Right.
many meaningful hockey games as we can get before October. So I'm back all in, believing in the team, despite what the standings may say and all that. So and this was a funny week too. A lot of places, because once one hockey site puts up, here's the where we stand in the wild card race, like they all started to realize that the wild card race in the Eastern Conference is pretty crazy. Everybody was like, all right, we're going to discount the Islanders because they're too far out of it. And I was like, good. That makes me feel a lot better, honestly.
Yeah.
But now they're back in it. They're on the fringes, but they're in it.
Yeah. Thank you for reminding me of the Barzell thing. It's because I had completely forgotten that was this week. But I recommend everybody listen to the previous episode of Isles House. I don't know if they put out one since then. They might have not, but they talked about it, and I thought their discussion of it was pretty good. And I'm actually going to go with their interpretation. I forget who it was. I apologize, but their interpretation of what he was saying was not so much why are no fans here, but more like, this is the sort of situation we've created for ourselves. we're not, we're almost out of the playoff chase. We're way down, we're last place in the division at that time. We've win one game a week. It's a joke. Like, nobody wants to, this is what we've done to ourselves, that nobody wants to watch us play. That's kind of my interpretation. Like, he wasn't sort of pointing at the fans like, what's your problem? It's more like, what's our problem?
So
we haven't given these people incentive to come.
And that means it wasn't you who at the Islanders town hall forum that filmed themselves saying, why would you say something like I just remembered that happened as you were talking, like that, just to say how much weird shit has happened to the Islanders in a season and this week and the league at large. And because big stuff is happening in the league, nobody like, once again, Austin Matthews said that thing about the fans in Toronto, and that building is always a library. And there was also like a Steve Dangle type influencer who sat in the 100s and was releasing a bunch of videos of how quiet everyone was being, and that made media sphere. But it just goes to show you how, when something happens, this is a great A to B example. When something happens on Long Island with the Islanders, the impact of it is so contained within the Islander universe and echo chamber. Because when almost the same exact thing happens in another market, a bigger market, it becomes a national crisis in Canada.
I mean, if anything, Matthews' words were much worse because he said it after a game. Like, we expected the fans to be a lot louder during that fight. It's like, dude, what's the matter with you? At least, Barzell, again, allegedly said this. Maybe he said something else. Who knows? And there's, even if he did say it, there's a couple of different interpretations. So I haven't seen anybody talk about this other than Islanders fans who had a good go with it for a little while. I still haven't seen the video of the person at the fan thing, so I don't know what happened. I only heard about it, but it was pretty wild. But I'm going to choose to be on Barzell's side here and have him kind of thinking with his teammates, like, man, we've done ourselves no favors this season. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk again about the games coming up and about the big trade that went down that sucked up most of the oxygen for this weekend. But I just want to read out two tweets, by the way. One is from our friend Greg Picker, who noted that Ilya Sorokin became just the 8th goalie to win a game by making just one save. And he had a whole tweet here with a bunch of stats, including one of my all-time favorites, Roman Turek, the guy who used to have the old Iron Maiden mask. He was a huge Iron Maiden fan, and he named his son Eddie after Iron Maiden's mascot. I always respected that about Roman Turek. All these other guys seem to have played a lot more than just an overtime. I mean, Antti Niemi here at a 14 minute 42 second stretch, he made one save for Dallas. And Marty Biron apparently played a whole season, period, 20 minutes, and made one save when he was with the Flyers. So anyway, Ilya Sorokin, welcome to the record books, number one. The second thing is talking about teams that are out of it. We had good fun with the Rob Rossi. We had the Michael Russo mysteries last week, and somebody, our friend Chad, recommended doing the Rob Rossi mysteries. And so I found a great Rossi Blue Sky note here where he talked about the Penguins. He said, this is from this morning, actually. Penguins have the second fewest points in the East. They've played at least 2 more games than all but one team in the wild card race. Only 31 games remaining. That's too much to overcome. Rob Rossi has spoken. The Penguins are done. There you go.
Yeah, there was a great little not to extend this portion, but there was also a great feud going on in like the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Oh yeah, I saw that today. Yeah,
media sphere. It's eating itself. There's actually 2 different feuds going on.
Oh wow.
Because one person reported something and then
right.
it's not fair to me to say this because I don't know the parties involved who said what, but so you can take me at my word for it or just skip to the break. But feud number 1 was I think Josh Yohe slamming another person saying, if the Penguins are going to have a fire sale, I'll be the one to report it. And then because he didn't like some report that was in some other site. And then the second one was I believe Dejan Kovacevic getting mad at our friend, aka Mr. Renaissance Painting himself, Jesse Marshall, for allegedly taking someone else's reporting. I don't know what's going on there, but you know that the Penguins are, and as we'll talk about later, like the Crosby trade stuff. So like it's the Islanders won 4 in a row for the first time this season. Like not only can we can laugh at the other fan bases, but also feel good about ourselves. And it's not just the fan bases and the teams we hate, but also their media people eating themselves. So it's it was a banner week on the ice for the Isles.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we're going to take a break. We're going to talk about the next week on the ice for the Isles and then get into the trade and all the madness that surrounded that. So meet us on the other side. Thanks. And now a word from our sponsors. First is always VintageIceHockey.com, where you can get t-shirts, hoodies, jerseys, and more featuring over 100 classic hockey logos. Vintage Ice Hockey now carries a full line of Islanders Anxiety merch featuring our blue and orange brain logo, as well as our Al Arbor and the Island shirts. And as always, our portion of the sales go directly to the Center for Dementia Research. That is VintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. They offer a Rosé, a Pinot Grigio, and a Pinot Noir that was named a Top 100 Best Buy by Wine Enthusiast magazine. All are delicious, priced at less than $15 a bottle, and available at local wine shops and at UBS Arena. Learn more at thepinotproject.com. Please drink responsibly. Okay, so the Islanders homestand concludes on Tuesday against the Colorado Avalanche, who again are playing in Madison Square Garden as we speak right now. The Avalanche made a huge trade. We're going to talk about it in a little bit. They are without Mikko Rantanen now, but they got Marty Necas, and they lost to the Bruins on Saturday. So hopefully they're not as big and scary as it looks, but that's definitely not an easy game to play. The Islanders are then in Philly on Thursday against the Flyers, also never an easy spot. Both of those games, by the way, are on ESPN Plus / Hulu, so don't put them on MSG. So if you are one of the poor people that has been affected by this ridiculous Cablevision thing, guess what? You could watch 2 whole Islanders games this week if you have ESPN Plus or Hulu or the bundle for both of them. So in a way that works out. But yeah, these are not really that easy games. Obviously, the Flyers game is probably the easiest of them. But again, it's in Philly, so that's a tough one. But it gets really hard over the weekend. The Islanders are in Tampa on Saturday night, 7 p.m. against the Lightning. And then they turn right around and head to Sunrise and play the Panthers at 6 p.m. on Sunday. Again, 6 p.m. So we won't be doing an episode next Sunday. We're going to do the episode on Monday. It'll come out on Tuesday when the Islanders play the Golden Knights at home. So it doesn't get any easier than that. We'll talk about that game and the 2 others after that before the Four Nations tournament later on. But this is going to be a rough one. And if the Islanders do want to maintain their status, quote unquote status in this race, they're going to need to win some of these games. And, the Avalanche and Flyers games go without saying. They need to win them both if they're going to stay alive. That Florida trip has never been easy, even when both of these teams were, expansion teams full of nobodies. This team, that 2-step has never done the Islanders any favors at all. If they take 3 points from those 2 games, that is a monumental achievement. If they win one of them, okay, good, that's fine. And if they end up going 0 for 2, that's not going to be helpful at all. So I don't know, of these 4 games, Which are you the most afraid of, and which are you maybe the least afraid of, considering the opponent and the location?
Yeah, I guess that Flyers game is the biggest one, obviously,
Hmm.
because I am expecting them to struggle against the Avalanche.
Yeah.
Schedule spot is not great for either team. The Avalanche are
Hmm.
playing the Saturday Sunday back to back, so
Yeah.
they're doing 3 and 4. The Islanders did the Friday Saturday back to back and
Hmm. Less than
Tuesday. So
24-hour turnaround, by the way, on that back to back as well, in case you missed
yeah,
that.
yeah. So it's like it's not a not a good spot for them or us. And I know the Islanders have some good results against the Avalanche in seasons past, but um, I'm not expecting they're going to be an underdog, and I'm just nervous for that one. And that makes the Flyers game a must win.
Right.
Uh, Considering the opponent, and then assuming that they can't get the full 2 points against the Avalanche. But if you look at the 4 games as a whole, right? It's the Islanders have relinquished the right to, as we said, the moral victories, and they're going to have to punch above their weight, and win games against teams that they're not supposed to beat, like they did against the Hurricanes on Saturday night quite a bit.
Hmm.
Um, so if you kind of just cover up the opponents and say that here's 4 games coming at the Islanders, like you got to just take the 6 of 8 points. Like you have to find a way to squeeze 6 points out of these games, or 5 at a minimum, to stay alive. And
Yeah.
because it doesn't get any easier. I don't think the Islanders have a game against like a non-playoff team from last season for quite a bit.
Yeah.
It's except for I think the Flyers. I'm sorry, excuse me. After that Flyers game, I don't think they play a team that's like not in the playoff mix this season for quite a bit. Like it's that includes the Rangers.
Hmm.
I'll say that they're in it. Like they've got the Lightning, the Panthers, the Knights, Winnipeg,
Yeah.
Minnesota, Dallas, Rangers, Bruins. That takes us to March. Then they finally get a little bit of a reprieve against the Predators, who they never beat. That's the Rangers and the Jets again, and then they go out west on the California swing right after the trade deadline. So, it's not just these 4 games coming up, but it's the next whatever how many games that is, 20 games
Right.
that the Islanders have a really tough schedule. So the odds are certainly stacked against them in that way too. But if they can find a way to gather 6 points out of these next 4 games, then you're going to look at those games as a different light, because they're like, oh well, they already beat teams of that caliber,
Hmm.
and they're playing well. That would mean that they're in good form. They're playing well enough to beat Vegas at home, or to beat one of Winnipeg or Minnesota on that little back to back. So, and then you get to the frozen face off thing. So,
Hmm.
yeah, it doesn't look pretty, but I'm just gonna take it 1 game at a time and say, like, at least I'll be up for this Avalanche game.
Right.
And even if they lose that one, I'll certainly still be up for that Flyers game.
Yeah.
If they lose that one, then it's going to start. Then I'll start putting them on in the background again.
I don't want to get too far ahead, because again, we have another episode coming up to cover these things before the break. But it would be very Islanders for them to keep the winning going. Let's say they beat the Avalanche and Flyers. Let's say they get 3 points out of that's Florida trip. Even if they play really well in one game and lose, let's say they lose the back to back and they beat the Lightning and they lose to the Panthers, something like that. And then let's say they beat Vegas at home. And let's say they, get again 3 points or so out of the Minnesota Winnipeg trip later on. They kind of keep the points coming in, keep going. And then guess what? Wham, you have 2 weeks off. So that Brock Nelson, one guy, can go play for this Four Nations tournament. And then they come back and, oh, by the way, they got to play Dallas, the Rangers, and the Bruins, right? So and then you could just lose those. It would be very Islanders for them to win these games, keep ahead of themselves, maybe even move up a little bit in the standings, get, within spitting distance of that playoff spot, and then immediately take 2 weeks and go to the Caribbean, or to, I guess not Nelson, but sit around, not watch, Cablevision, because there's no MSG there, and then come back and have to figure it all out again. But also, we've seen this team, or at least many members of this team, take an extended break and come back and play even better than they had before. So that could happen as well. But this is it's not getting any easier from here on out, and March is even more of a crazy madhouse than this is. But I think they can beat the Avalanche. I mean, they've done it before, and Alex Georgiev isn't there anymore. We've gone through that. Mackenzie Blackwood is now their starting goalie. I assume he's going to play in that. The Avalanche have gone through so many goalies in the last couple of years. I'm not even sure who their goalie is at this point. And then that Flyers game, I think they've shown that they can beat that team too. So this has a possibility of being, how many times have we said this is a make or break week for this team? I mean, I feel like we've been saying it since November, maybe October. I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
we took a little break. We took a little break for the past 3 weeks where we're like,
They're done.
you're basically done, and if you literally have to win every game for us to even care again. And then they did it, so now it's another make or break week.
Right. So as much as I hate to repeat myself, this is a make or break week for the Islanders. But we'll see. And then once we get through this week, we'll do the next episode, talk about those games, and then we'll do a follow up. After the Minnesota game, we can finally sit back and take stock and decide what it's going to take for them to move on. And then, like you said, the trade deadline is March 6th, I want to say. So and they have 3 days off. They're off the 5th, 6th, and 7th. So it's going to be a pretty fraught time. And again, if you're one of those folks that is adamantly trade everybody, get younger, get picks, I 100% do not blame you. I 100% see where you're at. And a lot of times, most of the time, I would say I am also on that team. But, when they've put together a bunch of wins in a row and you look at, how the math can work out here, it starts to feel a little bit different. But that being said, if you're also like, they're going to get to the playoffs and get killed by Washington or Carolina or the Devils, yeah, I can kind of see that too. So we shall see. But this is an interesting week versus opponents with a lot of different playing styles here and a lot of different directions going. So we'll have to see. 3 of them are on the road, obviously, and that Florida double take sucks. They've never ever played well. And the last time I saw the Islanders play in Tampa was when we had our live event at the second version of the Offside Tavern, and they played terribly in that game. We had a great time, but they were terrible. They ended up losing. So games in Tampa are never ever fun. Okay, we've teased enough. We can finally talk about the big trade that you have heard about for sure by now. I'm not gonna find the tweets. It doesn't matter. But at the end of the day, Mikko Rantanen and Taylor Hall are now members of the Carolina Hurricanes. We saw them both play against the Islanders on Saturday. Marty Necas and Jack Drury are now on the Colorado Avalanche. I believe there was a prospect thrown in there as well. I think he's with the Avalanche now. I'm not sure. And the Chicago Blackhawks, whose inclusion in this is absolutely hilarious, are retaining 50% of Rantanen's of Hall's salary, right? Or Rantanen's salary. Somebody's salary is being retained by the Blackhawks in exchange for, get this, their own 3rd round pick that they're getting back from the Hurricanes in this thing. So my friend Sam Fells, who is a Blackhawks writer, and I want to get him on Weird Islanders one day, even though he absolutely hates the Islanders and Patrick Waugh and Lou Lamoriello, but he's a very funny, great guy, has basically said that they're paying like $50 million for the privilege of getting their own 3rd round pick back. So great job, Kyle Davidson, on that. Basically, this is a huge deal. Two of the most overused words in sports are classy and underrated. And Mikko Rantanen, I think, might actually literally be underrated. They showed a graphic of like the most highest scores over the last 4 years, and he's like 4th or 5th. It's like McDavid, Draisaitl, Matthews, McKinnon, and Rantanen. And it's like, how come we don't know about that? Like, I feel like not enough people talk about this. I mean, if Draisaitl or McDavid or Austin Matthews sneezes anywhere, each one of those sneezes is a complete episode of 32 Thoughts, which I'm not going to listen to ever again. I'll get to why in a minute. But Rantanen seems to have somehow flown under the radar despite being one of the best players of his era and a cup champion to boot. So he's a Hurricane now. There are conflicting reports about whether or not he had any intention on signing with the Avalanche or not. After their game in Boston, Jared Bednar and Nathan McKinnon were talking, and both of them seemed like they had just come from funerals. It was, they seemed pretty shaken up by this. Maybe they thought he was going to sign and they didn't expect him to get traded. Well, it happened. And now the Avalanche are looking for a second line center, apparently. Insert Sidney Crosby rumor here. Insert Brock Nelson rumor here. It could be a lot of stuff, but the way this trade went down, the way it was doled out on social media and, was in terms of like media reporting, was in one way kind of old school, but in another way also extremely irritating because, like you said before, the Hurricanes are everybody's second favorite team now. everybody's rooting for good old Eric Tulsky to make a big trade here and do this. But my big takeaway, and I'll get to this after I throw it to you, is that the Hurricanes did all this, and yet they're still rolling out Peter Kochetkov and Freddie Anderson in goal.
Yep.
So what are we doing? Like, really? This is what you guys are going to do? Okay. Well, let's see how that goes for you guys. We don't know, as if we don't already know how this ends for the Hurricanes. But what did you make of the trade? What did you make of how it was reported? It was a little fun, but also at the same time kind of irritating.
Yeah, it was. The first thought I had was, oh well, I'm sure Mikko Rantanen will get will sprain his ankle, have like a high ankle sprain, right before they play the Rangers round 1 of the Stanley Cup final, and it'll be the first contagious high ankle sprain in the history of medicine, because the rest of the Hurricanes will also come down with one, and it'll be Dustin Tokarski, who is in the Hurricane system,
right,
in goal for them as they take on the Rangers. No quit in New York, in round 1, and it'll be seen as one of the great upsets of our time, despite all these guys being hurt. So that was my first thought, which I think is probably the prevailing thought of most sane people when a trade like that goes down. And like you, it was super irritating, and not because of the way the trade was broken or whatever, and the fact that the Islanders were playing, but like you said, it was almost as if the Hurricanes were solving some massive global conflict with the way that they were lauded by everyone. This is a new way of thinking. No, they traded one, like this used to happen in hockey. It happens in sports.
Right.
Like, players get traded. I find it so funny that these there's this like cliche now in hockey that mid-season trades are hard to pull off, and that's going to have to wait till the summer, which is basically just saying I need to write about something and keep my page views up, so I'm just going to make up this rumor and kick the can down the road until the summer, and then by that time you'll have forgotten that I said that so and so will definitely be traded by the trade deadline, and it really brought me back to the Bo Horvat trade. And I'm not saying that the Bo Horvat trade was nearly as impactful as what this one was with Mikko Rantanen, who's one of the best scorers in the league, being traded to from one really good team to another really good team. I get that. But what I do find so funny is after the Hurricanes and Avalanche made this trade, everyone's like, oh, this is so much fun, whatever. Like, Tulsky, what a genius he is for trading one player for another good player. And when the Islanders traded for Bo Horvat, the reaction, which we've talked about a lot, was that it was criminal what they were doing. It was offensive that they were the team to trade for Bo Horvat. And everyone's like, all right, let's move on. And from that point on, I was just like, every trade that's gone down in the NHL since then, I now view in that lens, which is unfortunate, but it doesn't ever fail, because I don't know which insider said it, but someone was like, we'll always remember where we were on this night.
Sure, pal.
I think it was in the roundup on Sportsnet or something, so it might have been Elliot Friedman or someone, but maybe, but no, I don't think so. I don't think I'm gonna remember where I was when Mikko Rantanen got traded, because I'm not, and I could sure as shit tell you that my all my friends that I grew up with were all in a group chat and together, as a lot of people are. Some hockey fans in there, but it's not a hockey group, I would say, and nobody brought it up. Like, this is the biggest trade in the NHL in years, and it's not gonna nudge its way into the mainstream as these guys think. Like, I think these insiders, like Chris Johnson, was probably waiting for his phone to ring, and ABC News to bring him on. Hey, we need you on for Sunday's 11 a.m. news hour to talk about this trade. It's just not. It's not how it works. It's if a Mikko Rantanen gets traded in a forest and nobody's around to hear it, did it actually happen? That's how the NHL is. And I was talking to somebody a few days ago who works at the league and in hockey, I should say, and I was like, I think the worst thing that's ever happened to the NHL was that it got lumped in as one of the 4 major sports in North America. Like that term, 4 major sports. Everyone's like, "Yep,
Yeah.
football, Major League Baseball, NBA," and I'm sure a lot of them are like, "Is the 4th one college football or college basketball or something?" Because it's just not. It's just
Yeah.
not. If this caliber of trade went down in any other sport, it's just a week's worth of in the news cycle, and for us, it's just
Mm.
stays in the echo chamber. People all make their funny jokes. "Oh, doing this on a Friday. There goes my Friday night."
Mm.
And then we just move on, and or the rest of the world moves on, and we make it sound like this is like earth changing moment when it wasn't. So yeah,
Right.
those are my thoughts on it. Obviously, more fun when stuff like this happens than not, but it's still, and I know I'm very cynical at this point because the season has done that to me, but
Mm.
it's pretty
Yeah.
annoying.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, and again, this is the kind of thing that like I have a Dan's Islanders book club coming out later this week at the Patreon, and I won't tell you what book it was, but one of the things that I was struck by in reading it was that how far the NHL has come in terms of monetary value and like TV contracts and things like that, and player contracts have risen and all that kind of stuff, and yet somehow it has shrunk in terms of public consciousness exponentially in just the last 30 years. Like, and a lot of that has to do with lockouts where hockey is just removed from the public consciousness, but there's a lot of other factors too. Mainly other sports are more fun to watch and talk about. And yeah, I'm with you. I think, I have no use for college football or basketball, but they are definitely both exponentially more popular than hockey is right now. Probably more popular than baseball is right now, to be quite frank with you. But the insiders who are so desperate for something to talk about, they're going to make the most hay out of this possible. There's already been like 4 or 5 different insider accounts of how the trade went down, how the negotiations with Rantanen broke down, how long they had been kind of mulling this over, how it affected the Canucks, who were close to trading Pettersson at some point, how it affects the Leafs, and what that meant that Mitch Marner being a UFA. I'm not kidding when I tell you that the Hockey Night in Canada intermission thing with Ron McLean and Elliot Friedman literally somehow transitioned from the trade of Rantanen and Natchez to how does this affect the Leafs because Mitch Marner is a UFA at the end of the season. And Elliot made a joke about it, but he still talked about it. And by the way, I mentioned before, I was listening to 32 Thoughts on Friday, and they were talking about how the Rangers are back. Are the Rangers back? The Rangers are back. Now they've won a bunch of games. They're definitely back. And he talked about Shesterkin and, would you, if you were one of these top seeded teams, would you want to see Shesterkin in a playoff series? Obviously the answer is no. And Elliot then concluded with the phrase, "Daddy's home." And I immediately turned the podcast off and said, I'm never listening to this podcast ever again, because that is the corniest, cringiest shit I've ever heard. So
Yeah,
that'll be the end of that.
he's the second member of the media to refer to make a daddy statement about the Rangers this season.
God,
as another a Ranger beat writer said, "Daddy Igor's back." I was that a couple weeks ago.
Speaking of Rangers beat writers, what was the Larry Brooks tweet that you want?
So yeah, so like all this is going down, and as you said, it's just these guys are so cringy and corny, and
Right.
some much more than others, I will say.
Mm.
And it's just it's impossible to take. It really
Right.
is, and I'm just sitting there thinking, why am I even like kind of reading through this, seeing like what the fallout is? I shouldn't be doing this.
Right.
But then you get a gift, and you realize why you keep coming back for more. And it was that. So all this is going on. Hockey world, tongues are wagging.
Mm.
People are firing up emergency podcasts, and you think that everybody's just gonna be spending the weekend talking about it. But then the Rangers they actually made a minor league trade, but then they made a big move.
Mm.
Kind of snuck it in there, knowing full well that the trade, the contract maybe wouldn't be all that well received, I guess is the way to put it. The guy that they traded Kako for, Will Borgen, he landed an extension, and it was 5 years, $4.1 million, and the Rangers, like I said, kind of just like put this in under the radar because Everyone else was paying attention to other stuff, and Larry Brooks sent out a duo of tweets, which I really enjoyed. The first one was simply, Rangers have signed Borgen to a 5-year extension at $4.1 million AAV. Puts the Kakko deal in a different light. And that the comments under that were not too kind about it, saying that the trade, no, it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then so he responded with an amazing tweet that definitely didn't come from anybody in the front office at Madison Square Garden or the New York Rangers. Maybe Borgen is not your guy. Okay, but a 5-year deal at $4.1 million for a top 4 righty ages 28 to 33 is, quote, eminently reasonable. I need to know that the workshop that was, all right, what are we going to have him tweet? How about the term eminently reasonable? Is that real words? Yeah, of course it is. Of course you would classify a 5-year extension at $4.1 million for like a not that good defenseman as eminently reasonable. The Scott Mayfield extension, the 7-year deal, was panned.
Yes.
For $3.5 million. Scott Mayfield is also a right-handed shot defenseman, and I think he's probably better than Will Borgen. And I don't know if people have called it eminently reasonable what Lou did, but
I think what Larry meant to say was that it's eminently tradable, because while Borgen has has trade protection, has a no trade clause next season, he has a modified 15-team no trade clause the next 2 after that.
Yeah, the Rangers they'll run him out of town.
Oh, 100%, and some other team will be absolutely beside themselves with glee to help the Rangers out of a jam.
Out of an eminently reasonable contract.
Yes. So when Utah acquires Will Borgen,
yes,
in 2026, they can also say that this contract is eminently reasonable.
But
and also, by the way, we're happy to trade our best player to the Rangers.
Yeah, so, right. He only wanted to go to the Rangers, so we were in a tight spot.
Right.
And I do need to also mention the Rangers are playing the Avalanche right now at Madison Square Garden, and so Larry did have another tweet after that Borgen one that I do want to read here, and it's, quote, somehow Matt Rempe was not credited with a single hit in the first period against Colorado. What is going on?
I don't know, maybe he didn't hit anybody.
Oh my gosh.
I've never seen somebody. Listen, the Islanders have been at the center of the quote unquote home cooking or cooked off ice officials list for many, many years. That's how people complain about Cal Clutterbuck and Matt Martin being so high on the all-time hits list, in which my response is always like, have you ever seen these guys play hockey? When are they not hitting people? They're constantly hitting people all the time. They're not always huge Dennis Potvin hip checks, but they're constantly hitting guys against the board. So I don't know what the hell you're talking about, but I've never seen somebody complain that a player didn't get credited for a bunch of hits. Like usually it's like, oh, they're crediting them too much. I've never seen somebody complain that nobody got credited for hits. But I guess Larry is a pioneer in this space.
Yeah, he's just fighting the good fight. He's sticking up for a guy that doesn't get enough enough coverage or anything for the impact that he's having on both the league and the team. And it's the league has to protect the superstars, and that's what Larry is doing.
And nobody's a bigger superstar than Matt Rempe. But anyway, getting back to the trade, this is a great deal for the Hurricanes. Rantanen is a fantastic player. He'll start scoring, I'm sure, unless he pulls a Timo Meier and just goes MIA upon landing on the East Coast. I expect him to score, but if I'm a Hurricanes fan, I'm like, wow, this team is really good up front. And I'm looking at my goaltenders like, really? These two guys still? Oh, Dustin Koharski's here? Oh, that'll change everything. So, and this doesn't mean that John Gibson's going to get traded to Carolina. Okay, enough with the John Gibson. Like, John Gibson has been traded to every team in the league for the last 6 years. Like, he's still in Anaheim. He ain't going. Now he's hurt apparently too. So I don't know what all that means. But if I'm the Hurricanes and I'm still looking at the same exact goaltending tandem that has gotten me flamed out in the second round every year for years now, I'm not that excited.
That's what's it really shows you how much of a cult that this team has turned itself into. And a weird cult, because none of these people, at least to our knowledge, are on the payroll with the way that they cover this. Like we used to joke, like we know the name of Carolina Hurricanes assistant GMs, and that's the only AGM I really know. I mean, I knew outside of like when a former great like a Patrice Bergeron, if he got lifted to like AGM of the Bruins on just to give the guy a job, we would know that, right? But like, I don't need to know what this guy's doing and how he thinks and all this stuff. And they took like a picture of him afterwards, the Hurricanes, like Eric Tulsky doing like the walk into the arena afterwards. It's like, this is a business executive of a corporation. He just upended somebody's life. It was like, yeah, you got to move across the country for another guy who's got to move across the country. None of the players seemed happy about the trade either, which was great too.
Right.
And everyone's like, oh my God. And I know that's how trades work, but I'm just saying, like, it was such a weird celebration of this man. And the trade was 3 hours old. Like this trade could work out brutally for the Hurricanes. What if Rantanen, like you said, goes Timo Meier and doesn't extend, and everyone, do you think anybody who was putting up, making, those big fat head pictures of Eric Tulsky to hang on their wall and walking around in a suit, life-size sticker of him on their wall, like, do you think those people who cover the sport are going to be like, kind of got ahead of myself on that one? No, because nobody waits to see how things play out ever. And when they do play out, nobody puts their hand up and says, got that one wrong, I'm sorry. So it's it was really tough to swallow how it's happening, but I really do hope that this sinks this team, and like you said, not against the Rangers. Hopefully the Rangers don't make the playoffs, and the Hurricanes, hey, maybe they play the Islanders, and their goaltenders, which they still have yet to address, sink them again. But like, as you actually kind of, it was funny, you noted it kind of in passing before about the Avalanche, how they just have been turnstiling goalies for a while now. And the Hurricanes they're not exactly doing that, but they haven't really solved their goaltending issues for a long time. And I must have read a million times over the 24 hours after the trade, was like, these are two of the smartest, most analytically focused organizations in the sport. And I just wanted to be like, yeah, well, one of them just signed Mackenzie Blackwood to like a 6-year extension and goal to like solve their goalie issues, and the other one continues to believe that Freddie Anderson and Pyotr Chekhov will be good enough to get them through 4 rounds of Stanley Cup playoff hockey, despite them being proven otherwise countless of times. So, yeah, real smart. I would love to be the guy on the payroll for one of these teams that makes 6 figures and it says, hey, and once a day I just come into his office and say, hey, you should trade for a better goalie, and then go home for the day.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so I don't know, but trades are hard to make in this.
Yeah, it's really hard.
So you never know.
But maybe in the summer. That's going to be something they'll address in the summer. Maybe at the draft.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. At the draft, they'll trade for Freddie Anderson's son because he's been there for so long.
One of the 37 trades that always happen at the draft that we're just so exhausted from covering.
Right. Yeah.
Sometimes we lose track of all the trades at the draft.
Yeah, somebody always jumps on these things, and somebody's always got to be the first trade, made, and the Hurricanes good on them for getting it over with and jumping in there before somebody else could get ranted in. But I don't know, they're a good team, but I don't know how good they're going to be when they get to the playoffs. Okay, I think that'll do it for this episode. Again, no episode next Sunday. We're going to record on Monday. Episode will come out on Tuesday, and it'll cover the 4 games that are coming up that could be a problem, but we'll have to see how it shakes out. Again, right now, the Islanders are playing well, so let's see how that continues when they hit the road. We had an episode of Weird Islanders last week that was fantastic with our friend Craig Dixon, aka Isles eBay. We also did an eBay episode on Country Club Atmosphere, but Craig was great, and we talked about Tommy Soderstrom, my least favorite Islanders goalie of all time. And if you want to find out why, listen to the episode. It was a doozy, and we had a good time talking about a player who made quite an impact in a very, very short period of time in many, many ways, in both his looks and his play and his attitude. It was a brief time, thankfully, and it was not one that is well remembered by most people, but it was great. And again, Craig was great. So follow him. If you're still on Twitter, follow Isles eBay. If you're not, but definitely listen to the episode of Weird Islanders put out last week. Okay, become a member at patreon.com/Islanders Anxiety for ad-free episodes, bonus podcasts, written posts, everything else. Again, we got our Country Club Atmosphere. We got our mailbags over there. Or you can join for free to get our announcements and our weekly release calendar. You can find us, of course, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, Audible, audible.com, iHeartRadio, YouTube, everywhere. Please leave us a review where you can. Our theme song is Morning Haze by Family Dinner. Listen to more of their music on Spotify and check out their recent record, God Looks Out for Fools. Read Lighthouse Hockey every single day for most up-to-date Islanders news and discussion. Islanders Anxiety Podcast are part of the Fans First Sports Network. Learn more at fansfirstsports.com. Shop vintageIceHockey.com. Try wines from the Pinot Project. Mike, where can everybody find you on Twitter?
The Big Lebowski with 2 E's.
Follow Mike at the Big Lebowski. Any final thoughts on the week that was or the week coming up, which, again, for the probably 15th time this season, could make or break the season. I hate that. I hate this. Stop doing this. This is why nobody comes to the games. It's like, you never know. It's teetering on the brink of, trade everybody, or maybe we can make this happen. It's too much for people. But what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I can't imagine that we look back and think there and find ourselves in a weirder week than the one that just took place. But I've also thought that 20 different times this season. So I can't promise that the Islanders will win or lose, but I can definitely promise that things will just continue to be bizarre. And that's, what we're here for. So,
yep.
Yeah, until 4 games, who knows where we'll be after these 4 games. Who knows? Who knows? How many defensemen will still be left standing after these 4 games? Because I got no idea. It's just gonna take us places, and that's all I can guarantee.
Well, I can tell you where we'll be. We'll be right here talking to each other about what happened. Right? You don't have to. Nobody has to worry about that. So we'll be here. We'll talk to you next week. Until then, take care, and thanks for listening. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.